Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to CIS Top 20s Control Series. Today, I'm going to cover CIS Control 5, which talks about security configuration for hardware and software on mobile devices, laptops, workstations, and server. So let's dive in. To begin with the CIS Top Control Series 20 series, I just want to start with my brief introduction. Myself, Archana Kamat. I have 10 years of experience into information security. I have extensive experience with designing, implementing, managing information security solutions across the security architectures, governance, risk management, audit and compliance, application security, secure SDLC. So in my experience, I've been working with the process side and the technical sides. And I just give one comment on that everyone should experience both the sides of those kind of coins we have in information security. And currently working as a principal security and privacy analyst with SAS compliance team in Oracle in Burlington, Massachusetts. And I'm also a member of Breaking Barriers Lean Circle Women in Cyber group. And this group has given me a wonderful platform where I can share my knowledge on this particular CIS Top 20 control. So the agenda for today, we will be covering control definition, requirement. So we will talk about the goal of the control, and then we will think about how this control and why this control is so critical that we should talk about. And then, yes, we will come with the implementation groups, how this implementation groups and their applicability with the control is like between, and how the organization should have their posture with this particular CIS control 5. And yes, we will deep dive in the control requirements listing, and we ensure that with an example that how this can be implemented well in an organization. We'll learn something new about some benefits of implementing the CIS Control 5 and how this can be helpful in your organization if you implement this. And yes, lastly, we will see some tools, open source tools, and the tools which organization can use and can get benefit with implementing the CIS Control 5. Okay, so let's begin firstly with the control definition and the requirement. So as the controllers talk about, we just have to establish, implement, and actively manage the security configuration of mobile devices, laptops, servers, and workstation. So the focus of this control is to maintain documented security configuration standards for all authorized operating systems and softwares. And we need to ensure that organization must establish some baseline for security configuration and then implement those baseline and ensure that when you're implementing that baseline, you have a configuration management and change control management process in place to actively track those changes and continuously monitor those changes. And obviously actively should be able to report on the security configuration of all the endpoint devices, which we are talking about in this particular control, like mobile devices, laptops, servers, workstation. This control is all about talking, security configuration for any configurable components in your system. We learn about hardware inventory, how to manage and maintain the hardware inventory and the software inventories in our CIS Control 1 and CIS Control 2. So we have to just keep in mind of those sessions and ensure that our systems, hardware, and software are configured well with implementing this control. And deploying secure configuration settings is extremely complex because it includes a lot of and variety of research and dependency. It requires a multidisciplinary staff that will analyze potential hundreds or thousands of possibilities, in order to make the right decision, because that's not at all simple, because it has a dependency across the region. Like if something has to be changed in the operating systems, then we have to check the network layer. If something has to change in the network layer, we have to we have to ensure that if that can be run and or acceptable by the application that running at that end. So furthermore, after configuration settings are deployed, after breaching all those complexity, it must be continually managed as the system constantly changes and new vulnerabilities emerge. So continual improvement has to be in place. So that's something is this control is more talking about. And obviously, it actually follows a logical path of building foundation so that we can improve on security posture and reduce exposure, which means like we just covered control 1, which talks about inventory of control of hardware assets, and control 2, inventory and control of software assets in a prior series. So we have to keep those mind as a foundational to understand what we have. And now it's time to shrink the attack surface by securing the inventory in your network. So this is how I take this control requirement and why it's so important. And why this CIS control is critical. So again, this has a multiple factors involved, which makes this control very critical and must have in every organization. If it is not, everybody can implement, but at least the gist of understanding, or maybe that high level, every organization should have the secured configuration in place. So let's deep dive in all the factors. So first factor is the default configurations for operating systems and application, like which creates you an exploitable state, default state. How? So these are default configurations and operating systems and applications are normally geared toward ease of deployments and not towards security. Something it just give you that it's something, okay, I have a default configuration and operating system. It's something I can easily deploy, and I don't have to care about extra complexity, extra deployment, or extra steps to adhere in my deployment. So here we are not talking about the security, but we're just talking about ease of deployment. This also means that open and running ports and services we have a default accounts and passwords, older or more vulnerable protocols. And yes, I'm looking at telnet in that sense, like you can do everything. Again, it also talks about pre-installs and perhaps unnecessary software, and the list goes on. So all of these are exploitable in their default state. And that's why I'm talking about this particular control implementation is very much necessary. If you have this default configuration for operating systems and application, so that has to be reviewed, and the configuration baseline has to be adaptable in your organization. The big question here is what constitutes secure configuration? As with most questions in information security, the answer is all contextual. So based on your business rules, which comes, which is another factor to make this control is very critical. So before we attempt a security configuration, we need to have some understanding of what your business needs to be and what it does today. This also means a lot of detailed analysis of your application, and this can be, again, a complex task. I can understand. And then another factor comes in picture, which tells you how are we managing such complex tasks? I mean, developing as a continuous process. It is not just one and done, obviously, right? So security configuration must be continuously managed to avoid the security decay. So that's come when, which also makes a control very critical. We have to think about the continual process. So as we implement, vulnerability management in your systems and applications. So we know that that will get patched and updated. And this will change your position on secure configuration. Configuration will change based on new software or operational support changes. And if it is not secured, attackers will take advantages of the opportunities to exploit both network, accessible services, and the client software. So we have to consider all these factors and ensure that we have to make this control very critical in your organization. Apart from this, secure configuration of hardware and software on mobile devices, laptop, workstations, and servers. This is, we need to think about, this is a part of basic group, and why this is kept as a basic group. I mean, this is the back office by IT and security and should not be handled by users in the front office. It's very likely that an organization is using some kind of security configuration unless they run 100% out of the box. The control is broken down in 5 subcontrols. The subcontrol describes the entire process of managing the security configuration. And of course, in the subsequent slides, we will go through them. But at the end, we need to understand the control goal and why this CIS control is very critical to have them implement, and why the CIS have kept this as a foundational and the basic control to have implement first, and then look at the entire picture of your organization. So this slide is talk about the control requirement, listing and applicability with IG. So I just provided here the 5 subcontrols, which we will talk about how to implement. But there is an applicability with implementation group. So you need to define which group you belongs to, and try to implement that control in your organization. So implementation group 1, 2, 3 is like the size and the type of organization you are in. So let's take more in control requirements and how to implement those. So there are many ways to go about secure configuration, and it's likely not everything publicly available, right? So if it is not everything is completely relevant or completely available, so you need to think about the more innovative way how you can start with it. So for example, you can start with deny all firewall rules in your deployment. And having this approach in your mind, you can gradually open up all the systems and applications until they are usable. This is actually great for new systems, for those yet to be deployed. But what about the older systems? We have to think the older system also in mind when you're trying to implement something new. It's not very likely you can just shut down those. Still need to, you have to seek to reduce the running services and ports, especially those which are known to the vulnerabilities and not in use. So you have to think about and come up with the plan and approach. So let's see those controls one by one and how we can implement those. So first, you can think about establish secure configuration. Reading this sub-control, as per me, anyone can just leverage hardening benchmark like CIS, which we are talking about. And there is one more benchmark, hardening benchmark, which talks about DISA. And follow the frameworks such as NIST. There's a special publication called 853 to secure the environment, and ensure your organization has tool or process which covers a library of policies based on their frameworks. So indirectly follow strict configuration management process for all the changes to your secure build. So having everything is documented and standard security configuration standards for all your authorized operating systems and software will help you to implement this control number 1. Going forward to next control, which talks about maintain secure images. After reading this description of how to implement maintain secure images or templates for all systems in the enterprise based on the organization's approved configuration standards, any new systems deployments or existing system that becomes compromised should be imaged using one of those images or templates. So after reading this, I feel the difficulty in this will be managing the images with the frequency of operating system and application updates, right? So ideally, the master image is updated in unison with the production environment as well. But that may be difficult if the master image is stored offline. So maybe a great idea is to use the master image as a source of truth when monitoring for changes in an environment. If system binaries change, which is not on the master image, it should be considered suspicious. So I can say gather file hashes with file integrity monitoring tool. So we have a great file integrity monitoring tool available in the market like Tripwire Enterprise, OSS EC, then Qualys. So those file integrity monitoring tool help you to identify those gaps, and you can just compare them against the master image. Going on to the third control, securely store master images. So here, when we're talking about this, treat this as a golden image. I mean, I will always think about that. You just have to think this control as you are treating the golden image, like it's actual gold. Encrypt it, restrict permission, store it offline, and monitor it with, again, a file integrity monitoring tool. So have your organization implement a best FIM solution and use every tool to get your advantage to make sure there is no unauthorized changes to the master images. So FIM is the best example where you can help to get this control implemented and satisfied in your organization, because that will help you to encrypt it, restrict the permission, and store it offline, and then monitor those all cycles you can cover with the tool. Moving forward, deploy system configuration and management tools. So in this, knowing something is changed is one thing. I mean, I'm changing, or your system administrator is changing on the system is one thing, but being able to do something about it, it is entirely different. I have seen an organization, they don't have a change management process, and they are changing something which is very significant. Like there is an enhancement going on that's significant. So nobody is talking about it. Nobody is implementing anything about to track those significant changes. So my goal here, for this particular control is, it's okay that you're doing those change, but being able to do something about is entirely different. There are tools available again in the market for secure configuration management. Like I can again say there's a Puppet, Shift, then Casper, then Tripwire Enterprise, 𝐿. Those are the best tools I can talk about. Have a better secure configuration management tool, and they provide very detailed step-by-step instruction on how to remediate a failed policy test with the ability to auto remediate the failures as well. So think about it. Think about the options and think about the solution your organization can go forward. The last control, the sub-controls we have, is implement automated configuration monitoring system. So this control is more talk about the security content automation protocol. So I would actually like to see this requirement swap places with the one above, which we talk about, the control number 4. The first step is to baseline your system. And only once you have the baseline should you begin going through the process to remediate. So it's just go hand in hand. have your baseline set up, and then you can start remediating those. So I think the implementation is quite easy if you have a better solution in place and implementation in place in your organization. I mean, I agree that manually doing security configuration, it's a daunting and a complex task. It's not that we have a back office and there is a person, IT manager or maybe IT personnel is doing this job on day-to-day basis. We have to have some tool in place to ensure that we are automating and we have a continual process in place. At the last, we need to ensure our systems and applications are secure, right? So what is the last goal of, or maybe end goal of having this implementation? It's we need to be secure. And as well as we need to ensure that we have processes to support an ongoing care and feeding secure configuration, right? So this is a foundational control. And so it's important to get a right and keep going attitude with continual improvement. Putting the required time and effort into this will give you a lot of return, simply because your exposure will have shrunk significantly, and that will also allow you to focus on the more advanced security measures without worrying about some PowerShell script kidding is coming, popping up your box because insecure telnet is on, right? So, oh, by the way, you should probably disable telnet from your environment, which is a first line of defense. So just in recap of what we have just learned with this control implementation, follow strict configuration management process for all changes to a secure builds, create master images, like I said, a gold image. Think about you're implementing a gold image that are secure and store those in safe and secure locations so they cannot be altered. Perform remote administrations only over secure channels and use separate administration network if possible. Use file integrity checking tools or application whitelisting tools to ensure your images are not being altered without authorization. Verify your testable configuration and automate this as much as possible. Obviously run your vulnerability scanner against your gold image on a regular frequency, and use SCAP, that security content automation protocol, to streamline reporting and integration. Deploy configuration management tool, which we talk about just like Puppet, Shave, and Casper, SCCM, and then Tripwire Enterprise to enforce your secure configuration once they are deployed. What benefits we can get? Like the CIS Control 5 has prioritized set of actions for cybersecurity with set of specific and actionable best practices to mitigate the most common cyber attacks. So having said that, that will help you to prioritize and focus on small number of actions, and it will also help in getting compliant with the other regulations like HIPAA, PCI, SOC, also improve in organization security posture and reduce the attack exposure, like I mentioned, which will give you a lot of return, and you will be able to focus on much more advanced security measures in your organization. And like also it will help you to shrink the attack surface by securing the inventory and organization and network. So you need to think about the benefits, like you just have to concentrate. If you're doing this stuff manually, how much weightage or how much concentration you have to give in your organization to secure everything in your inventory, which you talk about like hardware devices, software devices, applications, everything in an organization. And if you automate this, placing a good FIM solution, that will help you to gradually improve your continual process, and you just don't have to think much about what will somebody just have open up the telnet without having notified, without any configuration management change, what repercussion the organization has to face. So you have to think dually and ensure that you have a good solution in place. So these are some of the tools we can use for this control. Like I told about the file integrity monitoring tool, which I'm continuously talking about this control implementation, because this is the best solution an organization can have to automate this control, to have this control implemented with, with proper detection and the correction mechanism. Because manual, it's just, dependency. It's just dependency, and we doing work manually is not 100% accurate, rather than a tool which give you a more automate results, which will give you a lot of return and benefits. And yes, the reporting, how it will give you the reporting mechanism back to your organization to show your leadership that this is something has been improved significantly. The compliance has been improved, and you can showcase those evidences for different types of compliance your organization is catering to. And yes, there are another tools like Algosec Firewall, which will review the firewall rules, which will help you to review the firewall rules. Then there is a software deployment patch management tools, which will help you to track those deployments and the patch management, configuration management. The one which I marked with the star in the yellow mark, those are the open source, which we can use directly. The other one which has some money involved, but that's good to have in an organization. If you want to do some risk-taking or up-taking approach or up-taking analysis, what organization can go for, please do so. But those are very important and very, very useful tool to implement this control in your organization. So at the end of the day, I just want to say that what you are looking to do is maintain a set of minimum standards of your configuration. You can create the checklist, which give you an ideas like disabling IPv6. It's not necessary. Don't use RDP without TLS. Don't ever run telnet ever for any reason whatsoever. So we can also build such kind of checklist and use it for all our deployments. That's an all above and beyond. And don't forget about your existing and vulnerable systems. They need extra care too. So ensure that if your organization has end of life systems or end of support systems, ensure that you have a track on those systems, because we don't have a patch and vulnerable patch and solution that can be provided by the vendor. So we need to have an extra love and extra care to those systems till the time we are having a plan or the replacement items in place. Many organizations that know they have vulnerable legacy systems that they cannot modify directly to reduce the attack surface. If you have one of these brittle, fragile, and unfixable systems, consider ways to limit inbound, outbound access, and connectivity. So that will give you a more compensatory controls to help you to improve your compliance. So that will also help you to mitigate the risk and give you more evidences, like I mentioned, the compensatory control for the compliance. And until you can use that till the time that it can be upgraded or replaced with something more secure. So if you have any questions, just let me know. And thank you for looking at this series and listening to me for this control. Thank you so much.